So let's give Patrick Flynn a hand and hear what he has to say.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. I just love the name Liberty Fest. To be real frank with you, it can't be much more American than that. And so it's pure American. Number two is I'd like to thank Campaign for Liberty for sponsoring this event. It takes a lot of work to do something like this, and there's no guarantees of nothing, but there's no guarantees of anything in the United States of America either. I do know exactly why I'm running to represent Nebraska in the United States Senate, and it is about leadership. I'm a conservative Republican, and from 2000 to 2006, the Republicans had the presidency, the Senate, and the House. And as a conservative Republican, I'm thinking, oh yes, this is just going to be great. And it didn't take me long. I was just duly appalled at the lack of leadership we received from them regarding driving an agenda which would reduce the scope of government in our lives. And I'm looking at this as a man, I'm saying, except for President Ronald Reagan, why are we consistently electing representatives who do not know how to lead? And what I came down to, it is this. The only people that run for these positions are career politician types, which Ronald Reagan was not. Career politicians are incapable of leading this country into the future. I will use my life, business, and leadership skills to be a statesman, not a career politician. Now, one may ask, they say, well, what do you mean by a lack of leadership, Pat? And I'll give you a perfect example that happened as of this week. When it came to the debt ceiling, 67% of Americans did not want to raise the debt ceiling and were for cutting government spending. So that includes both Republicans and Democrats. It was there on a silver platter, and I was thinking, okay, you guys, get out in front of this. About 9 months ago, get out in front of it. Get together with the Republicans in the House and the Senate and the Democrats that want to be a part of this, because they had a lot of constituents that wanted to do the same thing. And let's take it. Let's get the people behind this idea. We will do everything we can do to market it nationally. And since our president is opposed to this, and we know this, he says he wants to remake America. So let's take that for what he said, not how he acts. He's not for us when it gets right down to it. So as we build momentum for that cause of not raising the debt ceiling, reducing spending, backing him up against the wall where he needs to be, thank you very much, showing the American people who he is, the whole game would have been changed. But instead, 4 or 5 months ago, all you heard from the Republicans was this: well, of course we got to raise the debt ceiling. It's just like, oh, really? You lost it already. So here we are today. You know, the issues we face are vast. But the bottom line is there is a full-blown assault on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in America today. So, Abraham Lincoln said at Gettysburg, we are testing whether this nation can long endure. And America is definitely at the test today. So when historians look back at these times right here, will we be known as a complacent, spoiled, one-day wonder, or the land of the free, the home of the brave? The time is now for we the people to stand up and free ourselves of this self-imposed crisis and return to the principles of independence. So, what are my solutions? I call it my blueprint for recovery and prosperity. Number one, do not raise the debt ceiling. The House should pass a full faith and credit act today, taking away the discretion from this administration to default on U.S. treasuries. Get forward with it. Say you can't default on them. Don't play that game with us. Number two, we need to cut government spending. Spending is the problem. Government is the problem, not the solution. I'm for cutting spending by 40%. Now, initially, that sounds pretty big. But for the last 5 years, our budget has increased by 50%. So 40% is not such a big deal, because the fact of it is, where has all the money gone? It's gone into these federal agencies. Now, these federal agencies are the exact opposite of liberty. Liberty means the condition of not being subject to restriction or control. These agencies has usurped the power of our elected officials, have taken away our liberties, and have created a culture of dependence. There isn't an agency I like, but the fact of it is, America would be behind that. You can't ask one business owner, one teacher, a lot of people that are anything to do, and agencies after us one way or the other. I'd start with the EPA. Next, I'd go after the Department of Energy. Now, the Department of Energy is pretty suspect, because we're all putting $4 a gallon gas in our vehicle right now. We've had this Department of Energy only since 1977. And we haven't been able to refine oil since. We haven't had a new refinery in America since. So people would start thinking, adding 2 + 2 = 4. I had a gentleman out in western Nebraska say, Pat, we found a huge mineral deposit out in western Nebraska. I said, it will never see the light of day. An agency will not let it go. We can get rid of HUD. We can get rid of the Department of Education. Now, someone said to me just a while ago, a pretty smart gentleman, he says, well, what would you replace that with? Well, number one, the Department of Education has only been around since 1979, and whether you can believe it or not, I got my education without the Department of Education's oversight. So it still worked pretty good, to be real frank with you. You replace it with parents, school board, communities, and then, you know what? What better thing can a community be proud of than their education system? That brings business, that brings families, that brings what people are proud of. Next thing is, I'm saying to repeal that Commodities Futures Modernization Act. The reason I'm saying that is this. Right now, in 2000, they made this act where you could only speculate 20% of commodities up until then. Now, this could be almost a boring topic, but the fact is, it's a very important topic to George Soros, I guarantee you this, because now that you can speculate 100% of the commodities market, which is our currency, one man can sway our currency if they have enough money. And he's very good at crushing currencies, and thank you very much. I prefer you leave our currency alone. But we better fight it what it is. 4, I'm for repealing Obamacare. 5, for the Dodd-Frank's financial reform bill. That bill is as bad as Obamacare in the healthcare industry, in the financial services industry. 5, I'm for 6, I'm for abolishing the IRS and putting a fair tax system in there. That's the best thing as far as I'm concerned. 7, it's, well, let's get back to cutting spending real quick. I could cut 50% of that United Nations budget right now, and we could decide on the other 50% next year when it gets right down to it. The next is the monetary system. We need a sound monetary system. I think we ought to take a look at the Federal Reserve, the central bank, and go back to the gold standard and start being accountable for the money we print. Then we need to start enforcing these antitrust laws. If you notice, America has about 2 or 3 players in each industry today. I mean, it's all these mega sized corporations. And the fact of it is when Monsanto controls 78% of the seed corn in this country, that is not healthy for this country. So we need to enforce those laws. And lastly, I'm for fair trade more than I am free trade. I'll guarantee you that much. The fact of it is this, that free trade sounds perfect. You know, it just sounds great. But the thing is the reason we had tariffs in the first place in this country were to protect the farmers and the business people against, number one, foreign countries, because they subsidize a lot of their products so they can bury us, and number two, mega-sized corporations. And I still believe in that. I'm for fair trade. So the thing is this. Where do we go? How do we win the war we're currently in? And I'll say win. It's all right to win in America today. The fact of it is this. All we hear is, oh, you don't want to say win. That might hurt someone's feelings. Well, when it comes to cars, I get sick of these smaller cars. It doesn't seem like President Obama is driving a very small car. And the thing is if some of us wanted to get in the car industry today, we'd have to go through all these regulations and we would never see the light of day. And I think food, education, it can all be deregulated. So how do we really get through this? I'm proposing we become the greatest generation ever. Now that sounds audacious, but the fact of it is, to really get through what lies in front of us today, we are going to have to become the greatest generation ever. And how do we do that? Number one, we pray. Now, if one thinks America became America without the reliance on prayer, they would be duly mistaken. When America declared her independence from the British Empire in 1776, our first commander-in-chief, General George Washington, called for prayer, fasting, and humble supplication to the Lord for his continued blessings. I'll stick with America's greatest president as my leader. 2, we have to become a virtuous man and a virtuous nation. In other words, we can start walking the walk today. Virtue means the quality of moral excellence, righteousness, and responsibility. Everyone here is a responsible American. You can tell that right now. Samuel Adams, a patriot of the American Revolution, said this. He said, "A general dissolution of the principles and manners will more surely overthrow the liberties of America than the whole force of the common enemy." He said, "While the people are virtuous, they cannot be subdued. But once they lose their virtue, they will be ready to surrender their liberties to the first external or internal invader." Now, does that sound familiar? But here is the great promise. He also said this. If virtue and knowledge are diffused among the people, they will never be enslaved. This will be their great security. So that's what I'm going with. And lastly, we have to have a constitutional revolution by electing representatives who can lead us back to the principles and values of our founding fathers. Our Constitution in the past and currently is getting rolled, and our representatives in Washington act like they can't do anything about it. I'll guarantee you if they have 300 million people behind them, they can do a whole lot about it. The Declaration of Independence says this about having a constitutional revolution. It said, "But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. I'm vying to become one of those new guards as your next United States Senator. Now, if you want Pat Flynn to represent Nebraska in the United States in the United States Senate, I need you to have my back. We need an army, and that includes you. We cannot do this alone. The last line of the Declaration of Independence says this: "And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." And if we think it's going to be any different for us, we better wake up. And that's what I'm asking of you. So if you like what we stand for, we'd appreciate you to go to our booth, volunteer to help. A lot of people in here are already helping us, and we appreciate this very much. Let's win this thing, America. Let's take America back. Let's be proud to be Americans. Thank you, and God bless America.